Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to another Friday Reads. This is Friday. We do Friday Reads on Friday, where we talk about recent reads, recent books we can all enjoy together. And I've avoided Friday Reads for the longest time on this channel because my reading isn't really conducive to it. I can't contract my reading experience of a given 7-day period to one video, even if it's 2 hours long. And a lot of the books that I would read in that time are not yet. So what good does talking about them do to you? So that stymied me until I realized I could just talk about recent books that I have read, which is a lot of fun for me. It's one of my favorite things to do. So I started doing that and started yelling at the camera because of the little mini-me iPad was washing out when I tried to show book images. I can't put them in the video. I don't have any editing skills of any kind. And a number of you pointed out that if I lower the brightness on the mini-me, the covers of the books will be more visible. So I've lowered the brightness on the mini-me, and we will see if that is true. And if it isn't, you're fired. So we're going to go through 10 books and just talk about what they are. And we're going to start off with a couple of books that are rereads. And one is occasioned by a big to-do. Douglas Stewart's book, Shuggie Bain, won the Booker Prize. And I reviewed it at the beginning of the year when I got my hands on it, when I first read it. And I remember I'll leave my review down below. Thought it was really, really impressive. A little bit uneven, a few mistakes that are easily correctable. This is obviously a prodigiously intelligent author. But the thing that really struck me about it, aside from some of those predictabilities, was how beautifully written it is. So Shuggie Bain, oh, look at that. Oh, that's much better. All right. You're holding on to your job. Good. Oh, this is the American cover. The UK cover looks different. But now this is actually out in paperback. And that is the thing that I reread because the publisher sent me the paperback here in the UK, in the US. And the reread was an improvement. Absolutely. This was a much thought over, heavily layered book. In very large part, I think one of the most effective things in it is the portrait of the main character's mother, who's just a hopeless alcoholic, and also her husband, who's in a cheaper version, a dumber version of this story, would have been the villain. Instead, refreshingly, there are almost no villains in this book. It's a fantastic novel. It's a fantastic gay novel. I really hope that in the wake of this enormous success, Douglas Stewart doesn't get the Garth Greenwell treatment. I'm really hoping that he is not announced as the Pope of the gays and given, every new gay novel to review in the New York Review of Books and shoveled onto the last 10 minutes of every UK talk show. Not only because that's deadly to a career. To be given that kind of ticker tape parade down Main Street is deadly to a career. Every author, every novelist especially, has to feel like they have to earn everything with every book. If they don't feel that way, you start to get bloated monstrosities. And I'll just have to hope that doesn't happen. And the other reason why I object to him being, coronated as the Pope of the gays is because that job is taken. Okay. But anyway, I reread this. If you haven't read Shuggie Bain and you're the least bit interested in modern contemporary fiction, I highly recommend it. And then now we're going to try this. We're going to skim that way, and that should change the book. Oh, I did it. And there's the other one. This is the other one, Promised Land, Barack Obama. This is a book that actually turned up in an earlier Friday Reads in this new revived series of mine, in which I praised the book, but it was measured praise. It was tempered praise, where I said that essentially my criticism of it, such as it was, boiled down to the fact that it wasn't the book that I wanted it to be. This is a very reserved and buttoned down, a very intellectual president. And yet I have to believe that underneath all of that, he seethes with rage at what has happened to the country in the last 4 years. I have to believe that. Everyone with a brain and a heart and a soul, everyone in the country who's not, in fact, a Nazi, seethes with rage over what has happened to this country in the last 4 years. I have to believe that he's the foremost among them, and I was kind of looking for that in this book, and I don't see it. I hardly saw it anywhere. And I was brought up short. I've had a number of people, a couple of you, and also one old friend of mine who is not on social media at all. He had to be helped significantly to see that Friday Reads video and let me have it with both barrels. That, you know, what happened to the rule that you don't judge a book by what you want it to be, you judge it by what it is. Said this has an amazing amount of intellectual curiosity. It is amazingly multifaceted, and it's got a lot of humor, a lot of well thought out humor all throughout, even at the darkest moments of the narrative. And I wasn't covering myself with glory in the conversation at all. I was taken aback, and I said, since when are you an Obama fan? You're not. You're an Obama enemy. And he said, this doesn't have anything to do with politics. And he was, of course, completely right. And so I reread the book. I just sat down, abashed, ears pinned back, and reread it. My old friend was right. There's a lot of stuff going on in this book. It is an amazingly thoughtful book. It isn't what I want. It isn't what I want President Obama to write. And maybe he never will, and it's not my place to do that. So I want to nudge my estimation up a little from last time. From last time I mentioned this book, especially since now, unlike last time, now this is stacked in all your bookstores. So there you go. So those are two rereads. Now we'll voyage into new territory. This is I can't read the writing. This Magnificent Dappled Sea by David Biro. This is a new novel about a boy on one side of the ocean who develops leukemia and needs a transplant, a bone marrow transplant. And the man on the other side of the ocean, an Orthodox Jew who is a match. A very hallmarky type setting, a very gimmicky type setup that works really well here. This is a really effective book, especially the man. I mean, there's a little bit of a mystery that develops in the course of the book about the match of their blood types and whatnot, and about his history. But apart from that little mystery, I don't want to spoil it, but that little mystery element in this book is most disappointing part. But the portrait of the man who does the donating, the man who is contacted, is really well done in this book. So it's not a perfect novel. But it's one that I can recommend. Maybe not to buy, but if you recommend it, if you request it at your library, I think it will please you. Okay, then we have something for the gays. We'll have a couple of items for the gays. You have to keep them satisfied. I know I already did that with Shuggie Bain, but well, I'm an idol to them. I can't give them just scraps. I strongly recommend Shuggie Bain. It's a terrific novel. The only reason that I'm adding other elements to that constituency in this particular Friday Reads is because I don't know how comfortable I am calling Shuggie Bain a gay novel. I'm not in a sense of ghettoization here, but in a sense of surely what if we're going to call something a gay novel, it has to be primarily about gayness, doesn't it? I've raised this question before on this channel of what actually is gay fiction these days. I mean, for a while there, it was really easy for it to define itself because there was a pandemic that was stalking gay men, and that made it easy to write gay fiction in a weird kind of way. Now, though, with gay marriage legal in the country for now, with gay adoption popular in most parts of the country, with gay rights seen as more and more of a given to be elaborated rather than a novelty to be established. But it doesn't matter anyway, because the two books I'm going to recommend are just very light, so they're not attacking elements like that. But neither is Shuggie Bain, obviously, since among other things it's set in a different time period. So I don't know. This is much closer to what we would call gay fiction. This is a very stereotypical romance novel in which the two protagonists are gay, and that's going to do for our categorization for this particular book. This is a very typical romance setup. Business tycoon gets a new bodyguard. The business tycoon is a self-absorbed a-hole who's gone through many bodyguards. The bodyguard looks at it just as a job, just protect the client. That's all. You don't have to like them. You don't have to be friends with them at all, and then, as you would have it in a romance novel, they fall in love with each other. But I thought even so that it was pretty well done. It's totally the totally disposable reading of an hour, but it's pretty well done. If you get an Amazon deal on this thing or something like that, you might want to try it if it's up your alley. The next one, there's a little bit more going on in the next one. That is We Have Till Dawn. And this is a story of a young man who was a professional sex worker for a long time, gay sex worker, and then gave it up, but has one incredibly lucrative new offer, a new offer that comes at just the right time and could change a lot. An offer, in other words, that he really doesn't feel like he can refuse. And so he accepts. And the client, if you want to call it that in this case, is like no other man that he has ever been with. He has the title comes from the fact that they have an arrangement, from dusk until dawn, exclusively. But here also the main protagonist, the two protagonists, fall in love with each other. But here it feels much less written in stone. With Watch Me, you know for sure what's going to happen, and you're just waiting. That is not a criticism at all. Readers of heterosexual romance will know exactly what I'm talking about. The predictability is part of the charm. But with this, with We Have Till Dawn, it didn't strike me that way at all. There's more of an edge to this. There's more of a brain to this. Again, no offense to the author of the previous book, who I'm sure could write a much more complex novel and is just writing for our audiences. But there was something more going on here, especially considering how outlandishly unlikely that last client is. So I want to recommend it if you're at all interested. Now, the next one that we have on our list here is an oddity. We started off with a couple of oddities with rereads. Those are the first appearance of those on a Friday Reads. And the next one is a reread as well, but it's not of a new book. It's not even of a new reprint of a book. It just happens to be in my Friday Reads. I thought I would. It's an old book, and I thought I would put it up here just to show it to you. And it's this: A Sailor's Odyssey. That is an oil painting of Viscount Cunningham. ABC his initials are ABC, and he was a poobah of the British Navy. He was Commander-in-Chief of the Mediterranean Fleet during World War II, had a number of signature naval victories during World War II racked up to his command. One of them a near-run thing that was largely affected. It was largely caused by his genius. It wasn't by the books, and it wasn't a matter simply of having more ordnance. So an active, colorful naval career, and then became First Sea Lord and went on to, greater honors on the civilian side after that on land. And he wrote a book, and he had help from one particular person, and A Sailor's Odyssey is just terrific. And I saw a copy. Oh, I forget exactly how I did. Oh, I know. I was Zoom chatting with an old friend of mine. I saw a copy of the hardcover on the shelf behind him in the Zoom conversation. I wonder how many times that's happened in our Zoom year in 2020. I wonder how many times I know that people routinely, regularly study the books on the shelves in the backgrounds of people's Zooms. I know that happens all the time. But I wonder how much of it is cross-pollinating. I wonder how much of that is turning into recommendations or book chats. I wonder how many people, even on cable news channels where everything is done in Zoom now, I wonder how many people, once the filming is over and you hit stop record and Jeffrey Toobin leaves the room, say, so-and-so, I have to ask you, what's that book right behind your head? I wonder how often that happens. But anyway, that's what this was. So it wasn't hard to find a digital copy of A Sailor's Odyssey, and reading it again after all this time, I haven't read it in decades, reminded me of how good a book it is. It's very much like sitting across from this guy and just talking with him. He was Dublin gutter trash. He rose right to the top of the naval ranks in service of his country. And unlike in other epochs, he didn't do it just by filing the right paperwork at the right time. He earned it. And the book is full of the kinds of stories that he told all throughout his life. And you can tell these are the pick of the litter. These are the stories that have been told so often that they burnish with the rubbing of having been told so many times. So that's an old book. It isn't a new release at all. I just thought I'd throw it in here. Then we have this thing. The Nine Lives of Pakistan. This is by Declan Walsh, who was for a long time a foreign correspondent, a newspaper foreign correspondent. So not only has he done great work on Deadline, but he knows the basics that all foreign correspondents do of keeping the attention of the reader. I have read quite a few books on the political and social state of Pakistan in the last 20, 30 years they were written by academics. They weren't written by journalists, and it shows. And this one is not that way. This is fascinating. It reminded me, brought back a lot of memories of every visit that I have made to Pakistan. And it also reminded me of how little truly satisfying English language work I have read on the country. So I strongly recommend it if it all interests you. Here we go. This is fantasy fiction. This is The Burning God by R.F. Kuang. This is the third book in a series. Do we have the... I forget the name of the series, but I remember that the first book in the series I handled roughly on this channel. I hauled it in a mail haul, and it seemed to me, the description, of course, only, not the book. In a mail haul, you're only reading about the pub sheet. And it seemed to me that the description, the general outlook of the book, was just full of fantasy cliches of, an evil lord and a humble chosen one and all that sort of stuff. And I have to admit, the first book didn't live down to those expectations. The first book had lots and lots of good stuff in it. And the second book did too. And the third book, The Burning God, is actually really good. This series is getting better as it goes along. So I'm not this is a Friday reason which I want to report on this book, but I can't really recommend it. It's heavily dependent on the books that came before it. So you really have to read those first, and that is a little bit tricky as a recommend because they're getting better as they go along. You will enjoy the first book in the series here, but you will, if you read fantasy at all, you will notice right away how heavily dependent it is on some very old and very tired gimmicks. You just have to have faith, persevere, read that first book. You will enjoy it. The second book you'll enjoy even more, and this book you will like very much. Okay. All right, this next book, it was really good. It's really, really good. So I'm not begrudging it. I'm just shuddering when I think about how many of these books I'm going to read in 2021. This is by Nicholas Christakis, and it's Apollo's Arrow, The Profound and Enduring Impact of Coronavirus on the Way We Live. This is one of the first books I read. Fareed Zakaria's book, 10 Lessons for a Post-Pandemic World, that was about how COVID will change society. This is another book like that. This book has a lot more emphasis on COVID itself. Fareed Zakaria's book mainly looks at social changes, and really it could be anything. The thing that's causing the social changes could be any number of diseases, whereas this book looks more at this specific pandemic. How it started, how it was originally characterized, how it moved, and how the stories moved with it, how it got to America, and how it took off in America. We're going to see so many of these books in 2021. I am going to see and read so many of these books in 2021. It's, as we say in South Boston, not even funny. But I'm going to do it. If they are all as good as this one, I mean, this is totally gripping and very intelligent. If they're all as good as this one, then it won't be that much of a hardship. Certainly this brought back a lot of memories of the very beginning of this year when I was looking at the news, and tucked at the bottom of the news would be this little story about a disease, a mystery disease that is in Wuhan, China. And I heard a couple of those details and didn't think anything of it. I remember vividly the thing that made me sit up, metaphorically, and pay serious attention. The thing that changed the story for me. And some of you will remember it too. And maybe that's when you started to pay attention as well. I heard that, a teaser for the next block was going to be about this mystery disease in Wuhan, China. And in the next block, one of the things I saw was film footage of a fully dressed shopper face down on the ground in a Chinese mall. Someone who had just collapsed and was completely unresponsive, was in fact dead by the time EMTs could get there and help her. I saw that and thought, I mean, if you've read, Boccaccio or Daniel Defoe, then you're going to recognize the detail right away of people dropping in their tracks in the street. That is serious. That is very, very serious. All of a sudden, it didn't seem to me like, oh, so this is a variation on the flu that is, and more old people are in the infirmaries. This was not that. This was a normal, not an old person, a normal middle-aged healthy person who fell down flat, just felled by this disease. That's when I started paying attention. I don't know how long it was after that I asked myself a very simple question, which is, what happens if this gets out of Wuhan? Which I should have been the first thing that I asked, obviously, since we live in that kind of a world. But it wasn't. I didn't think about that until embarrassingly later on. I was consoled in the course of reading this book to realize that a lot of people were slow to make that connection, to say, well, this isn't a traffic light. This is a disease. It's a virus. What happens if it leaves Wuhan? If it's doing this to the people of Wuhan, I didn't make that connection fast enough, and this book is full of stories like that. I believe this might end up being an important first chronicle of what's going on. And I shouldn't bellyache exclusively about the glut of these books that we will get in 2021, because if this is anything like any other subject glut, one or even two of those books will be brilliant, will be books for the ages. One or even two of them will be. I'm willing to take that. I'm even willing to admit that there may be one or two. I mean, 2021 will also, as I mentioned, have an absolute glut of Trump books. And one or two of those might be brilliant as well. It's my job. So I will, and then we'll finish up with a romance. We haven't had anything for Sarah at the book Schnitter yet. So we'll finish up with a romance. And this is Emily March, a lot of whose books I've read. This is the first book in a series called The McBrides of Texas. This book is called Boone. And that heavily muscled gentleman is Boone, not the beautiful dog. And you can look at that cover and say, well, the McBrides of Texas? And you're right, because this is Colorado. Eternal Springs is in Colorado, and it's where Boone, the main character in this book, has gone to escape from all of the psychic turmoil, the psychic wounds of back home in Texas. And the place, Eternal Springs, does start to heal him. It does start to make him feel better. It's beautiful, physically, first of all. And the people around are quirky. This is very much a location romance where the quirky characters, the quirky cast, is a big part of the draw. So, oddly enough, you might think the standard template of these romances is that the healing of the brooding He-Man hero is the center of the book. But no, actually, it's the heroine who comes to Eternal Springs and is even more wounded than Boone was. And he's in a better place now, a much better place. And he's able to help. He's able to reach out and help. And that the story works really well. I know I wasn't sure, like many romance readers and also many murder mystery readers, when I started this, I wasn't completely sure what I'd read by Emily March, or even if I had read something by her. But there's a scene about a third of the way through the book where I thought, oh, I remember this author. I remember this author. That was done really well. And I don't think this is out yet, so probably none of the rest of you know about the scene I'm talking about. But you will. You romance fans will, I'm sure, read this. It's a jumping on point for this author. It's the start of a new series. And I really enjoyed it. So we're going to end on a high note. We're going to end on a nice, smiling, optimistic note, although we started on one as well. I mean, it's really good news that Shuggie Bain won the Booker. That's great. That's fantastic. Certainly a lot worse books could have won it. It was one of the best novels that was up for it. So there you go. That is your Friday reads for this third Friday in November. Hopefully some of these were of interest to you, and I will try, if I can, I will remember to leave a link to my review of Shuggie Bain down below. But one way or another, I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.